Why did the Chinese government come down so swiftly and so violently on such a peaceful demonstration?
I don't think they came down so swiftly after all, but I knew that they were going to come down on the students as early as April. I told many students of mine at the University of Maine, I told many policymakers in Washington, D.C., who I meet with them on a monthly basis, that the repression were going to come. And they said, no. They said Li Peng was going to be kicked out, Deng Xiaoping was going to get kicked out. He said, no. You know, Deng Xiaoping has been a very ruthless person. He has carried out repression before many times. He killed many people the first time in 1957. After that, many other times, he was going to carry out this repression. But, you know, I mean, they waited for the right opportunity to do it.
Why didn't people warn the students? Why didn't other people who were giving advice to the students or leading them make them aware of what had been going on in Chinese history?
You know, this is something that, you know, we don't know yet, but I think the students were used, if not to say they were caught in a gigantic power struggle. China is a gigantic country. The Chinese party itself has 47 million people, you see. So this is a case of protecting the party against a handful of students. And you could see that they were going to move against the students. And in that case, it was not very different from repression elsewhere. I mean, repression in, for example, South Korea. You know, and Deng Xiaoping, by the way, many times said that South Korea was his model. It's a model where you can carry out economic reform without political reform. You know, and the United States egged on South Korea. For years, South Korea were able to carry out repression, and the United States said nothing.
Well, the United States is being forced to say something now, or possibly being forced to say something. How did, as I asked Ed Cheng earlier, how could Deng Xiaoping think that he could separate political reform and economic reform? It sounds like he was willing to make economic reforms, wanted to, but was not willing to make any political reforms.
Well,
how could he do that and not know that he would lose the support of Western countries?
That was what I was just telling you. I mean, he saw the case of Korea, and he said, hey, look, Korea has been doing this, you know, for a long time, has been repressing students. United States says nothing about it. You know, people still trade with Korea. Look at us, China. This is a gigantic country. This is a big country. We have about $20 billion worth of trade with foreign countries every year. You know, those foreign countries need us more than even they need South Korea. So therefore, we can go out and do this kind of thing. But there's an added element to this, and that was this. From 1978 to 1979, up to about 2 years ago, the reform went too fast, really fast. The economy was overheated. About 100 million people were moved, you know, from the countryside, from the hinterland, to the urban areas, to the coastal area. This created tremendous problems, social problems, political problems, unemployment, plus the fact that because of the economic reform, the provinces are now getting very powerful, especially the rich provinces along the coastal area, and the central government lost its power vis-a-vis the provinces. So, you know, about 3 years ago, the government tried to retrench.
Lost their power because of the economics that was happening with the economic advantage that the southern provinces had.
Yes, also corruption. Corruption has a way of eating away the power of the party.
I don't think people are so isolated from the rest of the world, especially in large cities like Shanghai or even Hangzhou, as she mentioned. VOA has been accessible to many people in the city, the Voice of America, and BBC. And of course, there has been some interference from the official broadcast, but interference is a very expensive thing, and they cannot do that 24 hours a day. And I also know that the Voice of America has been having this program 11 hours long, which is in Chinese. But for example, in my family, my brothers and sisters, they all have English, so they don't have to listen to the Chinese program, which is even longer. And so many people in the city actually know what has been going on.
Is Voice of America or the BBC usually have broadcasts in Chinese?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is that Cantonese?
But shorter, yeah. In cities like Canton, in Guangzhou, well, you don't have to listen to VOA or BBC. You can listen to those radios from Hong Kong, and it's even more accessible then.
Even TV, not only radios.
So both of you are from places where there's relatively quite a bit of access to media, being in the South.
Yeah.
For instance, if you were in more central China or in Beijing.
Yeah,
is that
I
true?
spent 6 years in an inland province, which was about 800 miles from Shanghai, which is on the border of Jiangxi and Hunan province. And I was there during the later years of the Cultural Revolution. And I remember even then, I listened to VOA every night. And many of my friends there who were born and brought up in those provinces, they also listened to the VOA. Like when the Chairman Mao's wife, the so-called Gang of Four, when they toppled down, my friends and I, we immediately knew much earlier than the official media because we got it from the VOA. And so,
are there routes of communication, underground or grapevine kind of communication between in China? So, for instance, the people who do listen to VOA or BBC, are there ways that they can get that information to more central China where people can't get those broadcasts that you're aware of?
Yeah, most Chinese people, I think there's about 65% Chinese people live in the East Coast. So, and most big cities are there. But to the information I got is that in central China, like in Xi'an, people know very little about what happened in Beijing, and that's why 2 student leaders were arrested in Xi'an.
Well, to return to the media, which you say was irresponsible in their treatment of the students, they've also perhaps are a factor in forcing the U.S. government to treat them differently. Do you agree with that?
Yes, but you see, I didn't say they were irresponsible, but you see the way they treat the whole thing. It was just like a carnival, it's like as if, if you just appear on TV for 1 more week, then Deng Xiaoping would be gone, and that kind of thing. And students, were not that experienced in political struggle. They didn't know the balance of power in the world and that kind of thing. So they thought, hey, let's lengthen this thing for a little bit more. But to be sure, you see, by having the visibility, the world knows what's happening in China. And hopefully, we can carry the fire on. But at the same time, this kind of repression, is going to put the student movement back, 2 years, 3 years, maybe for a longer period.